Imagine a world where the voices of Africans and their descendants were silenced, where history was told without them, and where the dream of freedom seemed impossible. It is in this context that a man was born who would become one of the most powerful voices for Pan-Africanism and Black dignity, W.E.B. Du Bois. In this documentary, we will follow his extraordinary journey, explore his intellectual and political struggles, and discover how his ideas continue to resonate today. This narrative is an illustration, a way to visualize his influence and legacy. If you are African descendant and care about unity and pride, we invite you to like this video, subscribe, and share it so that W.E.B. Du Bois's spirit can continue to inspire.
William Edward Burghardt Du Bois was born in 1868 in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, in a small and peaceful town of the American North. From a young age, he confronted a subtle but undeniable reality. Although he grew up in a relatively tolerant environment, he quickly learned that the wider world was far from fair. Racism was not abstract for him. He saw it through the stories of his peers, the cautious looks of adults, and the silent distance between the promises of society and the realities he experienced. This environment forged his determination and insatiable curiosity. He learned early that knowledge could become a weapon against injustice, and that to change the world, one must first understand it. As a teenager, Du Bois stood out for his brilliant mind and thirst for learning. At Harvard University, he excelled in all disciplines, from literature and history to philosophy and sociology. There, he realized that his African-American heritage was not a limitation, but a source of strength and identity. He read voraciously, questioned and debated, beginning to understand that Africa and its diaspora shared a common destiny, even across oceans and continents. After Harvard, Du Bois continued his studies in Europe, first at Heidelberg, then at Berlin University. These years were transformative. He discovered the rigor of scientific research, critical thinking, and the potential of social analysis to transform society. He noticed how Europeans studied their own history, while Africans and their descendants were largely absent from those narratives. This realization fueled an urgency in him. It was not enough to educate African Americans. He needed to reconnect a dispersed population worldwide with dignity, culture, and history.
Upon returning to the United States, Du Bois began teaching at Harvard and publishing his early work. He quickly realized that education alone was not enough. American society was deeply structured by segregation and systemic injustice. He decided to combine his intellectual work with bold social and political activism. He understood that to advance the cause of Black people, he would have to build institutions, unite talent, and influence public policy. In 1900, Du Bois attended the first Pan-African Conference in London, a historic event bringing together African and diaspora leaders from around the world. There he delivered passionate speeches, asserting that Black people must recognize themselves as a global community, share experiences, and work together for justice and freedom. These ideas were not merely theoretical. They laid the foundation for a transnational movement that would inspire generations. Every discussion, every resolution, every connection contributed to his vision of African and diaspora unity beyond national borders. Du Bois founded the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, in 1909, determined to turn civil rights advocacy into concrete action. He wrote, published, conducted sociological research, documented African American life, and analyzed systemic racism. His seminal work, The Souls of Black Folk, became an essential reference for understanding the condition of Black Americans. Within it, he developed the concept of the talented tenth, the idea that an educated elite could guide the Black community toward freedom, emancipation, and progress.
Over the years, Du Bois traveled extensively to Africa and the Caribbean, meeting leaders and local communities, understanding the power dynamics on the continent and in the diaspora. He documented their stories, resilience, and strategies for preserving dignity and culture under foreign domination. These experiences deepened his vision of Pan-Africanism, a unity built on respect, solidarity, and shared knowledge rather than coercion. As Du Bois progressed in life, he increasingly focused on the global mechanisms of oppression and the systems that perpetuated racial inequality. He observed the ways colonialism, even from afar, shaped perceptions and treatment of African peoples worldwide. He wrote about the condition of African colonies, analyzed the global economy, and exposed the links between economic exploitation and political domination. For him, understanding the world was not an academic exercise, it was a moral imperative to transform the reality of millions. His travels across Africa and the Caribbean allowed him to witness firsthand the struggles and resilience of local populations. He engaged with leaders, students, and activists, absorbing their experiences and incorporating them into his vision of Pan-Africanism. He realized that for real change to occur, African and diaspora communities must collaborate, share knowledge, and develop practical strategies together. Du Bois also engaged in intense intellectual debates with other Black leaders. While advocating education and enlightened leadership, he acknowledged the necessity of concrete political action. He wrote, published, and spoke at international forums, defending the principle that Africans and their descendants must shape their own destinies. His critiques of American policies, segregation, and discrimination were sharp and sometimes controversial, yet always grounded in justice and equality.
He emphasized culture as a means of liberation, asserting that music, literature, art, and African traditions were more than aesthetic expressions. They were instruments of memory, pride, and resistance. He encouraged African descendant communities to reclaim their heritage and create works that affirmed their identity. His message resonated particularly with younger generations who began to see themselves reflected in his vision of unity and cultural empowerment. In his later years, Du Bois intensified his international activism. He opposed apartheid in South Africa, supported independence movements in West and Central Africa, and advocated for cooperation between African nations and the diaspora. His efforts went beyond critique. He proposed solutions, strategies, and concrete visions for a fairer world. Every speech, publication, and conference appearance was an appeal for solidarity and collective action. Even as he aged, Du Bois remained a central figure in Pan-African thought. He inspired students, activists, writers, and politicians. His life demonstrated that influence does not reside solely in political power or wealth, but in the ability to educate, inspire, and mobilize. He spent his later years mentoring future leaders, writing memoirs, and disseminating his work worldwide. In this illustrative narrative, Du Bois becomes a universal symbol, a smooth, reflective humanoid figure, moving through spaces that embody his ideas and struggles, from university lecture halls to the bustling streets of Harlem, from international conferences to African villages. Every gesture, interaction, and subtle expression tells a story of struggle, hope, and transformation. Following his journey, it becomes clear that Pan-Africanism, as Du Bois envisioned it, is not abstract. It is living, practical, and rests on the belief that knowledge, culture, and collective action can reshape the world. He demonstrates that every individual, community, and generation has a role in this ongoing project. His life and teachings provide a map for navigating the present and imagining a future where unity, justice, and African descendant pride are not ideals, but tangible realities. As we reach the end of this journey through the life and legacy of W.E.B. Du Bois, questions remain. How can we, today, unite African descendant communities around the world? How can knowledge and history serve as tools of liberation and empowerment? What concrete actions can we take to continue Du Bois's vision in our daily lives?